Good evening and welcome back to the Goon multiplayer spectacular between Yukitsu, who's playing the Kamikura Minamoto, and Sydin, who's playing the Kubota Fujiwara. Yukitsu is currently up 1-0. Now, Yukitsu's changed his army up substantially. He has still his Naginata Levy and the Warrior Monk Hero, but he's bought 3 units of Foot Samurai in addition to his Nagi Monks. And over in the trees here, he has Sword Attendants and Mounted Naginata. So significantly less cavalry heavy than his previous fight. Now, over here, Sydin's army is primarily hidden by the trees. We can't see too much. We know his general's over in the far right corner, and he's got some Mounted Naginata moving up through, and a lot of Levy, I can see, and his Tetsubo Warrior Monks. So, really, there's 3 objective buildings here: the farmhouse, the sword dojo, and the workshop. In this case, given the location, the workshop's probably the one that's going to see the bulk of the fighting, and it probably should see the bulk of the fighting, really. It's you don't really want to let your opponent take the workshop uncontested, especially considering the sword dojo is so very close to it. You should never really let your opponent get both of those. If you have to throw everything you've got to stop it, you've got to throw everything you've got to stop it. But you should really try to avoid that wherever possible. So in this case, as we can see, both players are making haste for the workshop. They've identified how valuable it is, and they're moving up. But there's not too many forces here. If you look at them, 3 regiments, Foot Samurai, Nagi Warrior Monks, and Monk Hero is a fair number of forces, but the general is also here all by himself. And so really, Sydin should be, he's not being aggressive enough. If we go over here, we look, we notice that his horses are walking, they're not running. He's not taking advantage of the speed that he has for them. And the same with his foot soldiers up here. They're just waiting at the top of the hill while the workshop is being captured. And this is just letting valuable time slip away because Sydin has no answer to these Naginata Levy that are trying to take the Sword Dojo. He simply has no forces that are capable of dealing with them, since they will cut down his mounted Naginata with ease. But there's just not enough men in this workshop to prevent a dedicated push from Sydin to come in. Really, he should be much more aggressive, sprinting his troops, bringing his bowmen across here and just emptying shots into this group, just trading fire while the rest of his army comes up, and general behind, because he has the mounted Naginata, which are hidden now, but they were there. And so what he needs to do, because as you can see, he's got a lot of Levy and some Warrior Monks, but it's primarily Levy, is he needs to be running in, tying up, drop a rally, drop an inspire straight off, drop straight into stand and fight. He's got superior numbers, so he can simply tie up the entirety of Yukitsu's force while this fight over here is happening, because he has a huge Koku advantage in terms of troops, because he's only got the 1 unit over here that's dealing with 3 enemy units, and then just bring his mounted Nagi in and eliminate Yukitsu's general, while he's got no forces in a position to respond, because he really only has 2 units that are devastatingly effective. And he does try something quite crafty, actually. Coming in from the back here, he snuck through the gap, and he's going to bring his mounted Naginata around. He's pouring a lot of fire into these Warrior Monk heroes, as you can see. They're starting to die, but the accuracy of the bow levy is just so poor that it doesn't make too much of a dent in them. But nevertheless, a few kills is good. And he slams in, and immediately, boom, 7 Generals Bodyguard dead, 8 Generals Bodyguard dead. It's a fantastic opening salvo, but there's no follow-up. While this was happening, his melee forces needed to be closing the line here, so that while his general was trapped, and he was desperately trying to extract him, the front line here was providing forces. Now, he is bringing the mounted Naginata around, but the problem is the lines are still not engaged. So Yukitsu could quite easily shift his forces to pressure his opponent, and he's lost the moment now. The mounted Naginata, the second one he had, has been routed, and Yukitsu is intercepted with his 2nd unit of mounted Naginata. He has the workshop, he has the sword dojo, and so his melee troops, in fact all of his troops, are just vastly, vastly superior. Now, and Sydin's had the same problem he did in the last battle. He's grouped his troops up. He's got them very, very deep, but not very wide. So even though he has a huge troop advantage, they're actually flanked. And so their morale is terrible. And even before he has a chance to hit stand and fight, the bulk of his line is shattered. And you just can't really recover from that. These Nagi Warrior Monks aren't going to make the distance with so many fleeing friendlies, and they're of course completely surrounded as well, so they're likely to flee. And the Tetsubos have done fantastic things. As you can see, they got into these Foot Samurai and really cut them up. And Sydin spotted the last desperation play he has, and that is get these Tetsubos into the general, because there's not too much else left to do. Unfortunately, they get caught on the horses, and that's, I hate that, it cancels their charge. But boom, there's a guy gone. Another guy gone. Look at him, just smack him down. Fantastic. It's going to be too little too late though, although some of his forces have managed to rally. So, but we've got a nearly full unit of Nagi warrior monks and a 2/3 strength unit of foot samurai against his general, and another half-strength foot samurai returning to assist his general, and the mounted Nagi running around, and just some bow levy. So, meanwhile, the fight on this flank here has devolved. He's managed to catch with his Nagi monks and some bow levy the sword attendants and the Nagi levy, but it's just not going to make any difference. The main battle line is collapsed, and it's all over. It was a fantastic fight from Sydin. Yukitsu did exceptionally well. His play was flawless. Once again, Sydin's problem was that he failed to utilize his numbers effectively. He could have tied down his opponent. In fact, with the low morale of his troops, he needed to tie down his opponent on both flanks, reduce the ability of him to bring anything into play except his cavalry, immediately